I, 29F, have been dating my boyfriend Mark, 31M, for almost 3 years now. We've been living together for the past year in a cute little house we rent on the outskirts of town. Things have been mostly great between us, but something happened last weekend that has me questioning our entire relationship, and I need some outside perspective. Some background. I come from a big Italian-American family where food is basically the love language. My nonna immigrated from Sicily in the 1950s and brought with her all these incredible family recipes that have been passed down for generations. Growing up, I spent countless hours in the kitchen with her and my mom, learning these recipes and the stories behind them. When Nana passed away 5 years ago, she left me her handwritten recipe book, which is one of my most treasured possessions. Mark knows how important cooking is to me and how special these family recipes are. He's always been appreciative of my cooking and has even learned to make a few simple Italian dishes himself. His best friend Ryan, 32M, and Ryan's wife Amber, 30F, live about an hour away, so we get together for dinner, maybe once every couple of months. I've always found Amber a bit difficult. She's one of those people who always has to one-up everyone else's stories and experiences. If you went to Florida, she went to the Maldives. If you got a promotion, she turned down a better job offer. You know the type. She also fancies herself a foodie and is constantly talking about the latest food trends and diets she's trying. Every time they've come over for dinner, she makes some comment about how she would have prepared the dish differently or asks if I've considered using some trendy ingredient instead. Last Saturday, we invited Ryan and Amber over for dinner. Mark suggested I make Nana's special lasagna, which is this incredible layered masterpiece with homemade pasta, a sauce that simmers for hours with 3 different meats, and a blend of cheeses that Nana perfected over decades. It's not just delicious, it's a piece of my family history. I've only made it a handful of times because it's so labor-intensive, but I agreed because I wanted to do something special. I spent the entire day cooking. I woke up at 6 a.m. to start the sauce, made the pasta from scratch, and assembled everything with so much care. The recipe has to be followed exactly, or it doesn't turn out right. By the time Ryan and Amber were due to arrive at 7 p.m., I was exhausted but proud. The lasagna was resting on the counter, perfectly browned on top, and the house smelled amazing. I quickly showered and changed while Mark set the table. Ryan and Amber arrived right on time. Ryan brought wine. Amber brought a small container of something that she said was a surprise. We had drinks in the living room while the lasagna cooled a bit more. I excused myself to use the bathroom, and when I came back about 5 minutes later, I walked into the kitchen to find Amber dumping something all over my lasagna. She had taken the container she brought, which turned out to be some kind of vegan cheese substitute, and was spreading it all over the top of my lasagna after scraping off the carefully browned cheese I had on top. She had also sprinkled what looked like nutritional yeast and some kind of herbs that definitely weren't in the original recipe. I literally froze in the doorway. Mark was standing right next to her, watching her do this to my food, and not saying a word. When I finally found my voice and asked what she was doing, she turned to me with this condescending smile and said, "Oh, I'm just fixing this up a bit. I've been reading about how traditional Italian food can be so heavy and unhealthy. This vegan cheese has half the calories and none of the cholesterol. And I added some turmeric for anti-inflammatory benefits. Trust me, everyone will thank me." I looked at Mark, expecting him to say something, anything, to defend me and the dish I'd spent all day making. Instead, he just shrugged and said, "It might be interesting to try something different." Something in me just broke. I burst into tears right there in the kitchen. I tried to explain between sobs that this wasn't just food. It was my grandmother's recipe, a piece of my heritage, something I had spent hours preparing exactly the way it was meant to be made. Amber looked shocked and muttered something about me, overreacting and being too emotional about food. Mark tried to calm me down, but I was too upset. I ended up grabbing my purse and driving to my sister's house, leaving the 3 of them standing in the kitchen. I turned my phone off and spent the night crying to my sister about what happened. When I went home the next morning, Mark was upset with me. He said I had embarrassed him in front of his friends, that Amber was just trying to help, and that I had ruined the evening by overreacting. He said it was just food, and I was being dramatic. I tried to explain again how important these recipes are to me and how hurtful it was that he let someone else alter something so personal without even asking me. He just doesn't seem to get it. He keeps saying I should apologize to Amber for making her feel bad. It's been almost a week now, and things are still tense between us. Ryan texted me saying he understands why I was upset and that Amber means well but can be a bit much sometimes. Amber sent me a passive-aggressive text about how she was just trying to share her culinary knowledge and that she didn't realize I was so sensitive about food. Mark and I have barely spoken about it since our initial argument. He's acting like I'm the one who needs to make amends, but I feel like he completely disregarded my feelings and failed to stand up for me in our own home. So, Reddit, am I in the wrong for breaking down in tears and leaving my own dinner party when my boyfriend allowed his friend's wife to change my special family recipe without my permission? Update, 3 days later, ***. Wow, I didn't expect this post to get so much attention. Thank you all for your comments and support. It really helped me feel less crazy about my reaction. After reading your responses, I decided to have another conversation with Mark. I waited until we were both calm and had some time to talk without distractions. I explained again why Nana's recipes are so important to me. They're not just food, they're connections to my family, my heritage, and memories of someone I loved deeply. I told him how hurt I was that he didn't step in when Amber started changing my lasagna, and how his dismissal of my feelings afterward made everything worse. To my surprise, Mark actually listened this time. He admitted he didn't realize how significant these recipes were to me, which is frustrating because I've definitely told him before, but at least he was acknowledging it now. He said he was caught off guard when Amber started improving the lasagna and didn't want to create an awkward situation, but he now understands that by trying to avoid one uncomfortable moment, he created a much bigger problem. He apologized sincerely and promised to be more respectful of my cooking and more supportive in general. He also agreed to talk to Amber and Ryan about boundaries when they come to our home. That conversation was 2 days ago. Yesterday, Mark called Ryan while I was present, with my permission, and explained that while we value their friendship, what Amber did was disrespectful. He told Ryan that in the future, our home cooking is not to be improved upon by guests. Ryan was actually very understanding and said he'd talk to Amber about it. About an hour later, I received a text from Amber. It wasn't exactly an apology, more like an explanation of her actions. She said she's been taking a nutrition course online and has become passionate about helping people eat healthier. She claimed she thought she was doing me a favor by showing me modern alternatives to traditional cooking. She did eventually say she was sorry for upsetting me, though it felt a bit like a sorry you were offended non-apology. I responded politely but firmly, explaining that while I appreciate her interest in nutrition, my family recipes are important to me as they are, and in the future, I'd appreciate her respecting that. I also mentioned that if she has dietary restrictions or preferences, she's welcome to let me know in advance, and I can plan accordingly or make something separate for her. She sent back a brief, "I understand," with a thumbs up emoji. Not exactly warm, but at least it's acknowledgement. Mark and I are in a better place now, though I'm still a bit hurt that it took such a dramatic incident and hundreds of internet strangers telling him he was wrong for him to understand my perspective. We've agreed that we need to work on our communication and that he needs to be more willing to stand up for me, even in potentially awkward social situations. As for future dinners with Ryan and Amber, we've decided to take a little break from hosting them. Mark suggested we meet at restaurants for a while instead. I think that's a good idea. Neutral territory where nobody can improve anyone else's cooking. I'm also planning to make Nana's lasagna again this weekend, just for Mark and me, to reclaim the experience that was ruined. He's offered to help with the prep work, which is a small but meaningful gesture. Thank you again for all your support and advice. It really helped me articulate my feelings to Mark in a way that he finally understood. Update, 2 months later. A lot has happened since my last update, and I wanted to share because many of you asked for follow-up. First, Mark and I have been working on our communication. We've had several good talks about boundaries, respect, and supporting each other. He's made a genuine effort to understand why my family recipes mean so much to me. Last month, he surprised me by asking if I would teach him how to make Nana's marinara sauce. We spent a Sunday afternoon in the kitchen together, and I shared some of Nana's stories while we cooked. It was actually really special, and he was so patient with all the steps and details. As for Ryan and Amber, we did take a break from seeing them for a few weeks. Eventually, we met them for dinner at a restaurant as planned. It was a bit awkward at first, but everyone was on their best behavior. Amber didn't make a single comment about the restaurant food, which was honestly shocking. The real surprise came about 3 weeks ago. Ryan called Mark and asked if they could come over for dinner again. He said Amber had something she wanted to give me. I was hesitant, but agreed. When they arrived, Amber handed me a small, wrapped package. Inside was a beautiful handmade recipe book. She explained that her grandmother had been an avid baker, and when she passed away, Amber inherited her recipes. She said our incident had made her realize she would have been devastated if someone had changed her grandmother's recipes without permission, and she finally understood why I was so upset. It was the first genuine moment I've ever had with Amber. She actually apologized sincerely, saying she'd been insecure about her own cooking and had developed this habit of trying to improve everyone else's food to feel better about herself. She's been seeing a therapist who helped her recognize this pattern. We ended up having a really nice evening. I made a simple pasta dish, not one of Nana's special recipes. I'm not quite ready to share those with Amber again. And Amber brought a dessert using one of her grandmother's recipes, which she followed exactly. It was delicious, and it meant a lot that she shared something personal with us. Mark has been much more attentive and supportive since our big talk. Last week, we had his parents over for dinner, and his mom tried to suggest a better way to make the risotto I was preparing. Before I could even respond, Mark jumped in and politely but firmly told her that my cooking doesn't need improvement. I nearly dropped my spoon in shock. The biggest news, though, is that Mark proposed last weekend. He took me to this beautiful vineyard and had arranged a private dinner on the terrace. The chef had worked with Mark to recreate one of Nana's recipes, her famous chicken piccata, based on detailed instructions Mark had secretly gotten from my mom. It wasn't exactly like Nana's, some things you just can't replicate, but the effort and thought behind it moved me to tears, the good kind this time. During his proposal, Mark mentioned how much he's learned about respecting what's important to me and how he wants to build our life together honoring both our family's traditions. He even suggested our wedding menu could feature some of Nana's recipes, prepared by professionals under my supervision, of course. I said yes, obviously. We're thinking about a spring wedding next year. My sister has already volunteered to be the designated food guardian to make sure no one tries to improve the wedding menu. This whole experience taught us both a lot about communication, respect, and standing up for each other. It also showed me that people can change when they're willing to recognize their mistakes and do better. Thank you again to everyone who supported me and helped me realize I wasn't overreacting. Sometimes it takes a village or a subreddit to help you trust your own feelings. Update 1 year later. It's been exactly 1 year since the infamous lasagna incident, and I wanted to share a final update because so many of you have sent kind messages asking how things are going. Mark and I got married 3 months ago in a beautiful ceremony at my parents' backyard. It was smaller than we initially planned, thanks budget constraints, but it was perfect. As promised, we featured several of Nana's recipes at the reception, including her famous arancini as appetizers and tiramisu for dessert. My mom and aunts helped oversee the catering team to make sure everything was authentic. The best part? We had a special table displaying Nana's original recipe book alongside photos of her cooking, and each guest received a small booklet with a few of her simpler recipes that I was willing to share. It was my way of honoring her memory and sharing a piece of my heritage with everyone we love. Ryan was one of Mark's groomsmen, and yes, Amber was there too. She's actually become much more tolerable over the past year. The therapy she mentioned has really helped her work through her insecurities, and while she still occasionally makes annoying comments, she's learned to catch herself. She even asked for my permission before bringing a side dish to our Thanksgiving dinner last year. Mark has continued to be supportive and understanding about my family traditions. He's learned to make several of Nana's recipes himself, and has even started contributing his own family recipes to our regular rotation. His mother's Irish soda bread has become one of my favorites, and I've enjoyed learning about his family's culinary heritage too. The biggest news is that we're expecting our first child in about 6 months. We're having a little girl, and we've decided to name her Sophia after my Nana. I've already started thinking about how I'll teach her to make all the special family recipes when she's old enough. Mark jokes that she'll be making pasta from scratch before she can ride a bike. This pregnancy has made me even more sentimental about family traditions. Last weekend, I cried, hello hormones, when Mark surprised me by converting part of our spare room into a small heritage corner, with Nana's recipe book displayed in a beautiful glass case, along with some of her old cooking tools that my mom had saved for me. Looking back at the lasagna incident now, it seems both significant and silly at the same time. Significant because it forced us to address some important issues in our relationship early on, and silly because, well, it was about lasagna, but it wasn't really about the food, was it? It was about respect, boundaries, and honoring what's important to each other. For those wondering about Amber, she and Ryan are doing well. They're talking about starting a family too. Amber has actually found a healthy outlet for her improvement tendencies. She started a food blog where she creates healthier versions of popular recipes. The key difference is that now she's experimenting with her own food rather than hijacking other people's dishes. Mark and I still have occasional disagreements, of course, but we've gotten much better at communicating and respecting each other's boundaries. He's become my biggest defender in social situations, and I've learned to be more direct about what matters to me instead of expecting him to just know. As for cooking, it remains my passion and connection to my family. I've started recording video tutorials of myself making Nana's most complex recipes so that they'll be preserved exactly as she taught me. Maybe someday Sophia will appreciate having these videos to learn from, just as I learned from standing beside Nana in the kitchen. Thank you all for your support throughout this journey. What started as a painful incident turned into an opportunity for growth, not just for Mark and me, but for our entire social circle. And to think it all began with the lasagna. Update 3 years later. I wasn't planning to update again, but I received so many lovely messages around my last post's anniversary that I thought I'd share how things have evolved. Sophia is now 2.5 years old and already loves helping in the kitchen. By helping, I mean creating flour explosions and eating more raw vegetables than actually make it into our dishes, but her enthusiasm is adorable. Mark built her a little step stool so she can reach the counter, with supervision of course. Watching her little hands try to knead dough brings back such vivid memories of doing the same with my Nana. We also have a 6-month-old son now, Anthony, named after Mark's grandfather. 2 under 3 is absolute chaos, but the kind of chaos I wouldn't trade for anything. Mark has been an incredible partner through it all, midnight feedings, toddler tantrums, and still finding ways for us to have occasional date nights. The most surprising development has been my relationship with Amber. After Sophia was born, Amber brought over a week's worth of homemade meals for us, all following my recipes exactly as written, with a note saying, "No improvements, I promise." It became our inside joke. When she and Ryan had their son last year, I returned the favor. Amber and I will never be best friends, but we've developed a mutual respect that I never thought possible. She's actually become one of my strongest supporters. When my mom suggested adding raisins to Nana's meatballs at Christmas, a bizarre deviation that made me gasp in horror, it was Amber who jumped in with, "I think we should respect the original recipe, don't you?" I nearly fell off my chair. The biggest news is that I've opened a small Italian cooking school. After Sophia was born, I didn't want to return to my corporate job. I started offering cooking classes in our home on weekends as a hobby, teaching Nana's recipes, the ones I'm willing to share, and the techniques she passed down to me. It became so popular that 6 months ago, we converted an old storefront downtown into Sophia's Kitchen, named after both my grandmother and my daughter. Mark was incredibly supportive of this career change. He helped renovate the space on weekends and evenings, built custom workstations for students, and even handles the books for me. The business has been more successful than I ever imagined. I offer everything from basic pasta making classes to intensive weekend workshops on regional Italian cooking. I've even had a few local restaurants ask me to consult on their Italian menus. The lasagna incident comes up occasionally, usually as a funny story we tell new friends. Mark always shakes his head in embarrassment at his former self. Last year, for our anniversary, he gave me a custom apron embroidered with head chef. No improvements necessary, which made me laugh until I cried. Ryan and Amber are still in our lives, though they moved about 2 hours away for Ryan's job. Their son is just a few months younger than Anthony, and the kids play well together when we visit. Amber's food blog has actually taken off. She was even featured in a regional magazine. She's found her niche creating healthier versions of comfort foods, but she's always careful to call them inspired by rather than improvements on the originals. Character growth. Mark's parents have come around too. His mother, who once questioned every aspect of my cooking, now proudly tells her friends about her daughter-in-law's cooking school. She even asked me to teach her how to make proper risotto last Thanksgiving, a small miracle. As for Nana's recipes, they continue to be the foundation of our family's food traditions. I've created a beautiful illustrated cookbook with her most treasured recipes for Sophia and Anthony to have when they're older. Each recipe includes not just ingredients and instructions, but the stories behind them, when Nana first made them, how they evolved over her lifetime, and what they meant to our family. The lasagna recipe has a special page, complete with the story of the Great Lasagna Incident of 2020, as we now call it. Someday, Sophia and Anthony will read it and hopefully understand that sometimes the biggest challenges in a relationship can lead to the most important growth. Mark and I aren't perfect. We still argue sometimes, especially now with the stress of 2 small children and a new business. But we've learned how to fight fair, how to listen to each other, and most importantly, how to stand together against outside interference. He's no longer the guy who would let someone mess with my lasagna. Now he's the guy who once politely but firmly asked a student in my cooking class to stop suggesting better ways to make carbonara. Life is messy and complicated and exhausting sometimes, especially with little ones and a business to run. But every night when we sit down to dinner as a family, there's this moment, usually brief before someone spills milk or starts throwing food, where I look around the table and feel an overwhelming sense of gratitude. For my children, for Mark, for Nana's legacy that lives on through our family meals, and yes, even for that disastrous lasagna that ultimately strengthened our relationship in ways I never could have imagined. To everyone who supported me through that difficult time and has followed our journey since, thank you. Food isn't just sustenance, it's love, heritage, and connection. I'm so grateful I stood my ground about something that mattered to me, and even more grateful that Mark grew to understand why it was worth fighting for. Update, 5 years later. 5 years since Lasagna Gate, and life has taken so many unexpected turns that I hardly know where to begin. Sophia is now 4.5 and Anthony is 3, and they've been joined by their little sister, Lucia, who just turned 1. 3 kids under 5 is absolute madness, but the kind of beautiful madness that makes my heart feel like it might burst. Sophia is already showing signs of being a little chef. She can roll out pasta dough better than some adults who take my classes. Anthony is more interested in eating than cooking, but he's my enthusiastic taste tester. Lucia mostly just bangs pots with wooden spoons, but her joy in the kitchen is contagious. The cooking school has flourished beyond my wildest dreams. 2 years ago, we expanded to a larger location with multiple teaching kitchens. I now have 3 other instructors working with me, including my cousin who studied culinary arts in Italy. We offer classes for everyone from beginners to advanced home cooks, and we've even started culinary vacations where I take small groups to Sicily to learn traditional cooking methods firsthand. Mark left his corporate job last year to join the business full-time, handling the operations and business side, while I focus on curriculum and teaching. Working together has its challenges, but mostly it's been wonderful to build something as a team. He jokes that he had to join the business to make sure no one tries to improve my recipes. The biggest surprise has been the cookbook I published last year. I never intended to write a book, but after so many students asked for recipes to take home, it seemed like a natural next step. I included not just Nana's recipes, but the stories behind them, old family photos, and techniques that don't typically make it into standard cookbooks. The book has done remarkably well, even getting featured on a national morning show. The most meaningful response, though, came from distant relatives in Sicily who reached out after seeing the book. They sent me recipes I'd never heard of and photos of Nana when she was young in Sicily. It's been like discovering a missing piece of my heritage. As for Amber and Ryan, they've remained in our lives despite moving further away. Amber has completely transformed from the person who once fixed my lasagna. Her food blog evolved into a successful YouTube channel where she creates her own recipes. She's found her voice without needing to change other people's creations. Last Christmas, she gave me a beautiful handmade ceramic lasagna dish with hands off, chef's creation, painted on the lid. We both laughed until we cried. Ryan and Amber had their second child last year, a little girl. They asked us to be her godparents, which was touching. When they visit, our kids play together while we cook. Sometimes I catch Amber watching me prepare a dish with such genuine interest and respect, moments that still surprise me given our rocky beginning. Mark's parents have become wonderful grandparents. His mother, who once questioned everything I did, now defends my cooking methods to anyone who dares suggest alternatives. My daughter-in-law is a professional chef, she says proudly, though I always correct her that I'm a cooking instructor, not a chef. The distinction doesn't matter to her. In her eyes, I'm the authority on all things culinary now. The lasagna incident comes up less frequently these days, but it's become something of a family legend. Last year at Thanksgiving, when a distant cousin suggested adding bell peppers to my arancini, the entire family went silent, then burst into laughter. Mark dramatically whispered, "We don't improve recipes in this house," and everyone who knew the story nearly fell off their chairs. The most meaningful development has been creating new food traditions with our children while honoring the old ones. Every Sunday is pasta-making day, with flour-covered children and sauce-splattered counters. Sophia can almost shape orecchiette by herself now, her little thumbs pressing the dough just as Nana taught me. Anthony is the designated taste tester, solemnly informing me if the sauce needs more basil. Even little Lucia has her role, sitting in her high chair and sprinkling reed, throwing cheese when instructed. Mark and I celebrated our 5th wedding anniversary last month with a trip back to Sicily, just the 2 of us. We visited the small town where Nana grew up, and I cooked in the kitchen of distant relatives using techniques passed down through generations. One evening, sitting on a terrace overlooking the Mediterranean, Mark raised his wine glass and said, "To Lasagna Gate, the worst thing that ever happened to us." We clinked glasses and laughed, but there was truth in his toast. That disastrous dinner party forced us to address fundamental issues of respect, boundaries, and support early in our relationship. It taught Mark to stand up for me, and it taught me to clearly communicate what matters most. In many ways, that painful evening laid the foundation for the strong partnership we have today. Life isn't perfect. We still argue sometimes, especially when we're both exhausted from juggling 3 kids and a business. But we've learned to fight fair, to listen to each other's concerns, and most importantly, to present a united front when it matters. As I write this, I can hear Mark in the kitchen with the kids, teaching them to make Nana's famous Sunday sauce. Sophia is probably adding too many herbs, Anthony is definitely sneaking tastes when Mark isn't looking, and Lucia is undoubtedly creating some kind of magnificent mess. And I wouldn't have it any other way. To anyone going through relationship challenges, sometimes the most painful moments become the most important turning points. And to anyone who has ever had someone try to improve something precious to you, stand your ground. The people who truly love you will learn to respect what matters to you, even if they don't initially understand why it matters so much. Thank you for following our journey from lasagna disaster to the beautiful chaos we now call life. Food remains the heart of our family, not just for nourishment, but for connection, heritage, and love. Nana would be proud.